This is part 2 of the reading I started for June 2nd. So it comes from the Notebooks by Maria Valtorta, 1944. June 2nd, the first Friday of the month. I am resuming later to tell you what I am now hearing. Jesus says, the effort it takes to tear that soul away from its ideas is due to the fact that it is filled with them. In order to introduce liquid into a vase, it is necessary for the vase to be prepared. If it is empty, it can be entirely filled with the liquid we want. If it is half full, we shall introduce it half. If it is an inch away from being full, we can introduce at least an inch. It won't be much, but it will be of use for mixing in something. But if it is full to the brim, we can introduce nothing. Nothing. It has to be emptied first. This is easy when the vase lets itself be moved. But if it is fixed, and thus not movable, how can it be emptied? It has to be dried by either the heat of the sun or our patient work of soaking it up with a sponge, which will absorb the liquid until it is empty. Some souls are filled to the brim and irremovable. Their will makes them that way. They thus maintain themselves in the water they have introduced, which is not the water you and I would like them to have, and it is then necessary to remove their contents with the ardor of charity and patient constancy. It would be a much easier task if they let themselves be overturned by an impetus of love. But it is more meritorious for you to burn with love, to empty them of evil, and dry them of every evil with more and more sacrifice, and then introduce God into them. Introduce your God into them. Oh, Maria. He says nothing else. This short dictation was begun while I was carrying out my devotions and penances, and while interceding for one person or another, thinking of a heart which does not budge from its decisions, more anchored to them than a ship to a rocky bottom, the most refractory of all to my prayer. In the evening of this first Friday, I am presented again with a vaster and lovelier vision of Jesus with a radiant heart surrounded by many, many saints. There are many men, but in the foreground, and more radiant than all the other figures, as if through the light of a special privilege, there are 3 holy women. In this vision, however, the bodies which, as far as can understand, are already spiritualized, also show themselves to me in their earthly dress, just as occurs in my visions of the life of our Lord. I recognize St. John the Apostle among the men, who is standing almost in back of Jesus, looking at him and smiling, and I then see a Franciscan who is not St. Francis, but I do not know who he is. But the ones who attract my attention are the 3 holy women in the first row. One is Margaret Mary. I clearly recognize her. The other is a small, beautiful sister dressed entirely in white. Only her veil is black. Her face is very intelligent and radiant with supernatural joy. The third one is a thin, austere woman Capuchin, with the serious, good eyes of someone who has greatly suffered and wept. She is the oldest of the 3. She's not crying now, but she looks at me with great compassion. Jesus points to them and says, they are my heralds. They are the ones who did not reserve intense love for my divine heart for themselves, but spread it around the world at the cost of every exertion and sorrow. This is the first one in chronological order. She is the first voice to speak of confidence in my heart. The world was one big bramble of human ferocity and religious restrictions when Gertrude said to the world, love and hope. He's speaking of St. Gertrude the Great of Helfta, forerunner of devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, 1226 to 1301. The world was one big bramble of human ferocity and religious restrictions when Gertrude said to the world, love and hope. Jesus assures us that we are reconciled to the Father. His pierced heart tells us so. Let us work for this glory, for His glory. Let us do His will to give Him joy, and He will work the miracles of His mercy for us. She had understood the words emerging from this wound of mine. You know the other one, St. Margaret Mary Alacoque. You saw her last night. The third one is Veronica, a Capuchin Poor Clare, St. Veronica Giuliani, 1660 to 1727. The voice who in Italy said what Margaret was saying in France, the 2 who defeated philosophism, the enemy of truth, even more than the church did with her condemnations, and they defeated it with the strength of their love, which preached the truth of what it had heard and seen. They were tormented for this reason by blind men, and among the blind, how many should have seen? John chapter 19, verses 33 to 34. How many consecrated people among them? But they, my messengers, my voices, had been created for this, and they did this because to do my will was their joy. There are more holy women than holy men among the voices speaking of my heart, because the gentleness of loving belongs to woman. John, angelic, is among the saints, because he had a boy's heart in a hero's body. He is the first to have understood my heart. But all the saints are fruits of my heart, of love for my heart. Even those who seem to have been created to become the apostles of other devotions are in reality the fruits of my heart and of love for it. Whoever does not love is not sanctified. It is the heart that loves, and what is loved in the beloved? His heart. As in a mother, the heart of her child is formed first of all in her womb, so in those who bear God in the world, the heart of their Lord is formed first of all. When it beats within you, Jesus has already been born in you, and speaks to you, and caresses you, and brings you the Father and the Spirit, for when one is, the other two are not lacking. You are thus a heaven in which the wonders of God are worked, and from which splendors issue forth, and words emerge which are lights, and words of the God dwelling in you. O blessed are you that understand how I love you, and that repeat this love to the world, to convince it to love me. I have shown you this family of saints, whose passion was my heart, for you are a little sister. The heart of your Jesus and his cross, your loving goals, but the heart of Jesus was opened on the cross. John chapter 19, verses 33 to 34. In the maximum opprobrium, he obtained the supreme refuge for you, to tell you that the more one agrees to be scorned to do the will of the Eternal, the more one becomes salvation and blessing for one's blameworthy brothers and sisters. Even if their hearts split from the pain men cause my heralds, let these beloved ones of mine not tremble or draw back. I am with them, and here in this wound is the nest for my loving doves, wounded by cruel sparrowhawks. And I call them and say, Come, come, O my doves, and rest alongside the one who loves you. Come to the nest I have prepared for you, where I shall dry all your tears, and heal all your wounds. And I shall nourish you with the fruit of the tree of life, and quench your thirst in the river of living water, which flows from under my throne. And you shall bear my name on your brow, and on your heart the sign of my heart. And you shall reign eternally, because with love you have conquered love.